Hello and welcome back to the Ultra Films channel. My name is Evan. I am the producer over here at Ultra Films. Today we are talking about Stranger Things Season 4, Episode 4. Now, this episode is titled Dear Billy, and it may be the best episode out of Volume 1, except for maybe 7. They're very, very good. Both are exceptional episodes. I am so excited to talk about this one because it's just that good. So at the end of episode 3, we kind of left off with Will, Jonathan, and Mike being stuck on house arrest by some agents saying they can't leave, they're in grave danger, Elle's in grave danger, and you can't know where she is. And they don't really like that. They're not very happy about it, especially Mike, who just wants to make sure she's okay and know she's in this vulnerable place. But they are locked at home. There is a ton of cuts in this episode that go back and forth. So if I don't get everything chronologically as it happens, I'm sorry. I didn't do that. I did my episode 2 review as well, and it was kind of a little bit all over the place where I just followed a certain set of character story through the whole thing. But and I also actually talked a little bit about, I messed up. I think I put some stuff from episode 3 into episode 2's review because I thought it was like such a perfect continuation of the story that it just bleeds into the next episode, which is a good thing. But I think I accidentally included some of that stuff in there on accident. But anyways, so yeah, the agents leave him there. Elle leaves a note for Mike saying that she's off to become a superhero again. She's off to go regain her powers. She left with Dr. Owens, and the last they had seen of her is her driving off to go to prison or jail in the van, the police van. Then, over in Russia, we see Hopper finally start to make his escape. He had, broken his ankle so that he could remove his chain easy so he could, actually physically run away if he needed to or whatever but he goes, he's working on the railroad. They're all shackled up and chained together. He's in a chain gang, basically, except they're not all chained together. And so he hits, and then looks around, sees that the guards aren't watching, and then breaks his sledgehammer so that he can have an excuse to go to the shed, and that would be where he escapes. And there's just the one guard in front of the shed, and he ends up pushing that guard in there because the guard doesn't want him to go in for some reason, which is a hitch in the plan a little bit. He expected to just be let in there freely because he has a broken hammer. The guard doesn't let him, so Hopper has to attack him, push him into the shed, and knock him out, basically. And then he starts to take off his chain off of his foot, and it's all scarred up and broken and bleeding. But he gets it off as the other Russian, the really not so nice guy who's been spying on him and Enzo, comes in, and they have to fight. He uses his chain to choke him out, but as he's doing it, that guard ends up shooting his rifle into the air through the shed, and all the other guards start coming in to check, and they have it, the building, at least the one entrance to the building, surrounded. Hopper ends up getting on the table, busting a hole through the roof, or it's already there maybe, and climbing out the top. He leaves a flare down by a bunch of explosive material and blows up the shed and all the guards, and you see everybody fly off the screen. Then he hops off the roof, obviously, and runs away and grabs a snowmobile and drives into the nearest town, into a little he ultimately finds a hideout in that town where Enzo set up a bunch of supplies for him. I don't know, actually. Later on, I think it's clarified that it's actually Yuri's hideout and not Enzo's, because he's just a prison guard. Yuri's the one who's the criminal and smuggles stuff in. But they end up ultimately going and capturing him for reasons we'll explain a little bit down the road. So that all happens, and then you have this scene also sort of towards the beginning here where it bleeds right from the last one where Nancy and Robin end up coming to the school. They were talking on the radios, meeting with Steve and the rest of the kids at the school, and Max is talking about how she just saw this big old grandfather clock just randomly in the school wall. They talk about how they were searching for files from their counselor, and they basically found out that these kids were having troubles or some sort of trauma, and then they started seeing visions, hearing things, and then ultimately they ended up seeing Vecna in some way, shape, or form before they ultimately died the next day. And the grandfather clock before the visions was like a 24-hour window or a 48-hour window before you were screwed. So Max had seen the clock. She was discovering, okay, I have 24 hours, 48 hours to live. I think it's 24 hours to live. And as they're discovering that, they hear noises in the hallways, and they get all freaked out that Vecna is coming back. And they go in the hallway. Steve grabs a lamp, and they hear somebody running down the hallway, get closer and closer, and then zoop, pops out of the corner. It's Lucas. He had just ditched the one search party that's searching to hurt and hunt Eddie for the team that's trying to save him. And so yeah, that's pretty insane that group is going so far. Lucas had led them to Hopper's cabin that's all destroyed and abandoned back from the last episode. That's where he led them and then dipped out and ran away so they couldn't follow him. And then basically it's middle of the night when this is all happening. They end up going back over to Nancy Wheeler's house, the Wheelers, and they go into the basement, and that's where they kind of do all their planning every year, every season. So they went to the basement to start figuring out, piecing together all these clues and figure out what the next step was. And then Jason is still gonna continue his hunt with or without Lucas to find Dustin and Eddie and the rest of them. So he ends up going to Lucas's house the next morning and just meeting his little sister, saying, "Hey, where the heck is where's Lucas at?" And she goes, "I don't know, probably with Dustin. Like, leave us alone." And then slams the door on him. He doesn't get any good answers. So then they all, that group, that basketball boys group, ends up going and doing some digging and research. They all get together to figure out where it is. One of the boys who started seeing the visions and like I think he'd seen the clock at this point. Absolutely had seen the clock at least that night or that morning. He ends up suggesting that they check out Reefer Rick's house because there was somebody saw him there and that he had gotten out of jail. And so they come up with this list of all the spots to check, and they end up adding Reefer Rick's house to it. And that's where Eddie is currently. That's where he's been stuck. So Eddie's kind of compromised at this point. Everybody's going to be looking for him and actually know where he's at this point. So that is not very good. Yeah, obviously everyone else is still at the Wheeler's house, and Max starts writing notes obsessively, and the other boys are there watching, going, what the heck is going on? Nancy and Robin dipped out. They came up with a plan to go basically interview Victor Creel, and Steve wanted to go. He's always stuck babysitting the kids, but he wanted to go and interview Creel as well, get some questions off. However, he doesn't come off as very distinguished or as a, scholarly type, because they're going to appeal to the director and pretend that they are students. I think they said they were going to be like students of like Harvard or something like that, that are studying psychology, and they want to interview Creel so that they can try to get inside his mind, sort of thing. So Steve wanted to go with them. he doesn't get a chance. He's staying at home. He's watching the kids. So him, Dustin, Lucas are all watching Max write these crazy letters. She ends up handing him to him, and Max threatens Steve that, hey, I'm gonna say that you kidnapped me if you don't just take me to go see what I want to see. And so they say, hey, take us to I think it's the east end of Hawkins to, she wants to go visit her mom, give her letters, and then she wants to go to the cemetery to see Billy. And not like actually see Billy because he's dead, but his headstone, and go talk to him about what's going on. So that's where they're headed. So then you go over to the asylum. They have that meeting with the director. Robin pops off on him. He's initially denying their request to see Victor Creel because you have to, put in a request months in advance. And then Robin basically lies straight up saying, we put in like 5 requests and each one was denied. And this was our last ditched attempt to maybe get this interview because it's for our final or for our like thesis statement or thesis paper. And if we can't get this, then we came all this way out here for nothing. And all we wanted was to be respected. And just straight up pops off on him. And he's left like kind of shocked and goes, all right, I'll make an exception. And so he allows them to go and visit Creel. He takes them down to the, walk through the, I think there's a couple cameos. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't catch everything. I'd probably have to go and look. But he takes them through the, like, out, I don't know what you call it, like the outside, it's like recess for kids, but like for the insane people, where they get free time outdoors and they just hang out outside, leisure time or whatever you want to call it. So he like walks them through all those people. I think there's a couple cameos that you get from those guys, and then he takes them down to this basement, the super max sort of facility, or at least what that would look like for an insane asylum, the high risk ward. And he takes them down to the basement, and he goes, all right, I'll come in with you and make sure you guys are safe. And they're like, oh, no, we actually just kind of wanted to be alone, if that's okay. And he's like kind of like weirded out. I think Robin messes up saying Nancy's fake name that they made up. I think her name was like Ruby, and she calls her I don't know, I think she might have even called her Nancy or something, and like they just messed up the names. So yeah, but they he ultimately lets them, but with some suspicion. He goes back up to his office. He calls the actual, head of psychology at whatever university they lied about, and finds out they were lying, and comes back down. But in the time that they do have alone with Victor Creel, he gets to explain his whole life story and what kind of happened at his mansion. So yeah, they oh, and I forgot another thing that happened earlier when they were still at the Wheeler's house is Max drew, before she wrote the letter, she drew out a bunch of pictures, and Nancy ended up like folding them up like origami sort of and fitting all the pieces together, and it was this big old floating mansion with a little bit of floating. It wasn't originally broken up and floating, and that was like Vecna's mind space, and they were curious as to why, and that was like the final puzzle piece clue that like they were like, okay, that's Victor Creel's mansion, because of the rose glass that he maybe that's no, I just jumped way far ahead. That's in episode 5. I'm sorry. It's after, yeah, that's for episode 5. I forgot. I'm it's such a good season, it all bleeds together. I don't know. Okay, so anyways, they talk about Victor Creel. He describes his house. He describes his children, his family, the things that were weird that started happening around the house, and how they found dead animals, tortured, mutilated in their yard, how the lights were always flickering, and things were just being weird in general. And then ultimately he describes how his, the radio was flickering, the lights were flickering. He went to go try and adjust it, and then his wife got launched into the air. Her eyeballs pulled inside of her head, and her body was broken apart in the same way that we saw happen to Chrissy and Fred. And then it happened to his daughter, or no, it happened to, his wife, and then he tried to get his kids out, and he couldn't open the door because I almost spoiled it. But anyways, yeah, I can't say anything without, because I know everything that happened, so I'm like trying not to say the thing. You know what I mean? You know the thing. If you've seen the whole season, you know the thing. But he tries to get his kids out. His daughter ends up dying. He goes into like this coma state and sees these visions, the same visions he'd been having of the strikes he had called back when he was at war, and the babies dying in a burning carriage sort of thing, that he caused this damage and destruction with his actions, even though he didn't, physically cause anybody issues, still messed him up. And that's kind of what happens when you're at war. And so he's seeing these visions being attacked, but then ultimately survives because he hears an angel. And it's ultimately later revealed very, very soon after that it's music that was playing that caused that. So they identify that straight out the gate. And Victor Creel's probably still very unsure of what happened and just bewildered by it. So he doesn't say, oh well, it was music, but he knows he heard the voice of an angel. He knew what they linked that to what song was playing. Very, very clever of them. But yeah, also on top of that, the actor for Victor Creel is Freddy Krueger, which is ironically very similar to what Vecna kind of looks like appearance-wise. So then, back at the Byers house, over in another state, the boys are still locked up. They call Argyle at the pizza place. Well, they don't call them. They trick the agents into thinking they're hungry to get pizza. They call Surfer Boy Pizza to have Argyle, come over and deliver that pizza, and that was going to be their way out. So yeah, that's going on, and all of this is kind of happening at the same time. The cuts are really weird, or not weird, but they're purposely done. But like, there's a ton of them like right here towards the end. So then Argyle ends up showing up a little bit too late pizza delivery, because the boys and the agents, the agents go to answer the door, and then get shot down. And the boys freak out and go, oh my god, what's happening? And they're on the stairs, and Agent Harmon is the one who didn't get shot. He turns the corner, starts firing. People come in the back door, people come in the side door from the garage, and there's just all these people firing bullets into the complex. And Mike, Jonathan, Will, and Harmon end up running outside. Harmon gets shot on the way out, trying to cover, return fire and cover them. And Argyle rolls up as all this stuff is going down. He's like, wow, there's so many cars, they're having a party without me. And then pulls up, and then Jonathan, I think, probably slams his hand on his windshield and goes, stop the car, get us out of here. And then tells him to drive off. There's guys with guns shooting at him, and they end up getting away. They get kind of chased a little bit, but after a while they just give up. After they've searched the house, they kind of realize Eleven's not there. They see the note that she left for Mike, and no, he's not there. And unfortunately, the other agent that's alive, I forget his name, he gets captured by the military agents, and ultimately is going to get tortured for information about where 11 is. Meanwhile, they're on the run. Harmon gives them a pen, saying he's gonna, they're asking him to write down where she's at, and he doesn't tell them, and he dies before he can tell them that information. So then they're all very visibly frustrated, not knowing what the hell is going on. That gets shown even more in episode 5 too. I won't go into that. Then back over in Hawkins, we have Max at the cemetery. She's visiting Billy, and Billy is dead. He's at his gravestone, but she's reading the letter she wrote to him out loud. Before she visits him, she visits her mom, and her mom turns into Vecna and freaks her the frick out. He says, "It's time for you to come join me," and she's like freaking out. She wants him off, and then she gets in the car, very, flustered from the thing, and they go, "What was it? Did you see what's going on? Did you see him?" Sort of thing, and she won't speak. She doesn't want to talk about it. But she ends up going. They go to the cemetery, still in range with Nancy and Robin over the walkie-talkies, so they can still get in contact with them. But basically, yeah, they go to visit Billy right before she goes to talk to Billy and read his note to him. Lucas goes, "We're right here. Like, I don't want a note from you. I just want you to talk to me. Like, we're here still." And she goes, I can't. I just can't." And then walks away from him and abandons him. Basically, she makes them all wait at the car until she's, done. But while she's there talking to Billy, she ends up going into her what should be her final vision, and Vecna chasing her down to finally finish her off. I don't necessarily know why he, starts picking a victim and only is able to do so much. I think it has something to do with his powers and being in the Upside Down while he's doing this. We see him get locked into the little cables that hoist him up to do his magic. So I think that's something to do with it. Just the fact that he can't, be there he can't, impose his will in the real world for that long without actually being there. So I think that's what it is. But as that's going down, she starts seeing him and running away from him, screaming for help from Lucas, Dustin, for them to come and help her get away. And she ends up just running around, hiding, and then ultimately ends up in his mind. But then one other piece to the story here is Joyce and Murray are over in Alaska, meeting up with Yuri, the guy who's the pilot who's supposed to get Hopper out of Russia, and they meet up with him. He's kind of a crazy, he's a criminal, he's a crazy dude, but they meet up with him, ask for proof of life, so he ends up calling Enzo at the prison, asking him. It's very dangerous to be calling a prison guard saying, "Hey, did you get that prisoner out?" sort of deal. And so it's a bit suspicious right there. And also, he's just a weird guy. But he says to Enzo, "Yeah, I actually ended up taking a deal." And at this time, you see Hopper getting, hearing noises and footsteps from people coming into the town to search for where he is. And they end up barging into the safe house, knowing exactly where he is, and catching him instead of letting him escape. And so he's getting paid to catch Hopper again and bring other Americans extra amount of money than what Hopper and Joyce could even offer. So he gets to steal their money and then also get paid by the Russian government to turn in 3 Americans. So it's not great. It's very, very bad, actually. And then also on top of that, Enzo gets captured, and they get taken from the work camp to actual full-fledged prison fight arena, and that's where Hopper and Enzo get dropped off. And Joyce and Murray ended up getting drugged by the coffee Yuri gave them, and they pass out, and he kidnaps them. So they're all screwed, it seems like, that with no way out. not very good. Anyways, then you go back over to Max, who is chilling with Vecna in his mind, and he starts attacking her. Nancy and Robin end up calling the boys and Dustin, and explaining that it has to be music that gets them out of that trance and is the one thing that helps them escape from Vecna and allows them to reconnect with the real world, because it's like a frequency your brain can tap into without even knowing. So it's like a subconscious thing that your brain can notice. And I think that they got that correlation from something that Fred had said earlier. Fred, rest in peace, Fred. But I think something that Fred had said earlier about music is what keyed Nancy into thinking that, and that's how they pieced those clues together. So they tell Dustin to go play Max her favorite song, and that should get her out of the trance or help her get out of the trance. They don't really know. They just think that's the key. And so they ultimately go and grab her headphones and her cassette player and grab all her, cassettes, and Dustin runs it over to Lucas, and, they're all, Steven and Lucas are there trying to wake her up, still yelling at her. And Dustin goes, okay, what's her favorite song? What's her favorite song? And Lucas is like, what are you talking about? What is it? And he's like, it's Life or Death. Tell me what her favorite song is. And then they put on, dude, I forget the song. Let me pull it up here. It is Running Up That Hill by Kate Bush. Running Up That Hill is what they play for her, and she ends up hearing it. It's perfect soundtrack. They do such a good job of it. But Running Up That Hill, they start playing, and Max relives a lot of her memories with like Eleven, Lucas, Dustin, Will, Mike, all of them, and seeing all her good memories, like her life flashing before her eyes, and then ultimately regains like this will to live and grabs Vecna by like the shoulder and rips off a piece of his like skin, like a big old chunk of his like, it's almost like the vines that are on in the underground, like the neural system, like he's a piece of that now. He's like become part of it, and she like rips it off of him, and he gets and is all hurt by it, and she starts running away towards the exit that she sees, where she's floating in the air, and the boys are yelling, trying to do anything they can to get her down. And so she ends up running out the exit as Vecna's throwing all these things at her, these pieces of just giant rocks trying to crush her. She ends up escaping, and Vecna's able to like instantly heal himself, but like she escapes, she drops back down on the ground, and she's alive, comforted by her friends. Just a beautiful, beautiful scene. I can't even describe it in a way that like shows how good it really is. That's just the best I could do. Sorry, guys. Okay, so my computer randomly cut out somehow, but that is pretty much the end of the episode right there, as she ends up just sitting there, hugging her friends, hugs it out, and that's the end of the episode. And so that is the end of my review. If you enjoyed this, leave me a like. Let me know what you thought about episode 4. Let me know what you thought about that running up the hill scene at the end of this episode. And let me know what you think about Vecna in the comments section. And then don't forget to subscribe. The rest of this series will be covered by Dylan. So I will not be here for the rest of the Stranger Things videos till the finale, the actual finale, episode 9. We're going to do a big old group thing, so stay tuned for that. It's going to be pretty exciting. I'm very, very excited to see volume 2. But Dylan's got you the rest of the way, and then until I see you in the finale, peace.